Just a visual representation of Genesis chapter 1, right? So you have 6 days of creation, 6 spaces of creation, I think about it as. And the first 3, God makes these kind of conflicting spaces. He makes day and night in day 1. Day 2, he makes water and sky. He actually separates water. There's water above and water below. And water always represents chaos and disorder and void. And God makes a space called the sky where there is order between these two so-called waters. And then on day 3, we see God bringing land up out of the water and creating plants and vegetation. And then the next 3 days, he creates bodies to go into these spaces. And I want to focus really on days 4 and 5 because there's a little hint here that's given to us. He populates these spaces. But in day 4 and 5, he kind of creates 2 bonus beings to populate these spaces. In the waters above, the night, and the waters below, the sea. So I want to show you these 2 bonus beings that he creates. In verse 16 of Genesis 1, he says, I'm going to create a light to rule over the day and a light to rule over the night. So he makes the sun and the moon, and the Bible says, and he also makes stars. And he also makes stars, like a little bonus is thrown in there. In day 5, in verse 21, he says, I'm going to make these swarming creatures for the sky and for the water. Sky and for the sea. So he makes the swarming birds, he makes the swarming fishes, and then he does the same thing. And he also makes the great sea tanin. Tanin is the Hebrew word for what is used here. The tanin is a sea monster, a sea dragon, or some kind of great big sea serpent that he makes. So you have to ask the question as you're reading this, what are these bonus creatures doing? One of them is in the water above, one of them is in the water below. Who are they? Who are they representing? What are they about? And this whole concept is really not as foreign as you might think. You might be thinking, what a weird way to think. We think very much the same way as these people used to think. When we traverse the chaos of the sea, when we traverse the chaos of outer space, the void, when we modern human beings go over the sea or go into space, we make these little floating islands of order that traverse these things. And we call them by the same name. They're called ships, right? You have sea ships and you have spaceships. And they're both called ships because we think the same way as ancient Hebrews did. That those are places of chaos. And you need to have something that keeps the chaos out so that you can get across it safely. So we build these ships. Now, I want to show you a quick little video. A music video by a band called Uncle. And I'm just going to play you the last little bit of it. To just give you a visual representation of what I'm talking about here. A link between the stars and the dragons in creation. So when you're ready with that, Lou, and I'll talk through it. All right, so here you see the ship in the sea. It's doing everything it can to keep the chaos out of it. It's been designed for order in the midst of chaos, right? And then they kind of zoom into the sea and you see just how this was a representation to the ancient Hebrews, to the writers of Genesis, of chaos. And this is more overt chaos. The sea is always trying to attack the land. It's always restless and trying to fight, right? And so the video now kind of zooms out. And just let's watch a little bit as it zooms out further and through the storm, through the clouds, up into the stratosphere. Further and further away, through the sky, through the creation. fellowship traversing chaos, a different kind of chaos, but it's the same kind of thing. Also, is built to keep the chaos out while human beings travel through the sea. So I want you to keep that thinking in your mind, because it's so important that we see a link between these two things. Last week I spoke about stars. This week I'm speaking about dragons. Keep that picture in your mind, if you would. It's so important that we recognize that the Bible is introducing us to two kinds of chaos, two kinds of disorder, two kinds of evil or unholiness. There is overt evil, in your face evil. We're very much like the sea. It's restless and it's pounding and it's perverse and constantly attacking the land, trying to infiltrate, and it represents everything that's opposed to God's order. But then there's another kind of chaos, a covert kind of evil. There's an overt evil, and then there's this other kind of covert evil, very much like space. It's like void, emptiness. It's indifferent to all that is good. It is non-existential. It is abortive. It is humanicidal. It's twisted. It's where we get the whole concept of the Nephilim. It's transhuman in its origin and thinking. And when you look at the world, you can see this evil. It comes out in tribal thinking. It comes out in all of the other religions. It comes out in Buddhism. It comes out in Hinduism. It comes out in Islam. It comes out in atheism. And it's equally evil as the overt, in-your-face kind of evil. And the Bible is also telling us that there are two spiritual populations in these spaces. The Bible allegorizes the stars in heaven and the sea dragons, that there's actually personalities behind these allegories. And not all of them are evil. There are some in these spaces, living in these spiritual spaces, who are actually good. The other thing that the Bible's trying to tell us is that these evil ones are not being portrayed as enemies of God Himself. Instead, they are viewed as enemies of God's created order and all the good that God has made. They try to be enemies of God, but they're not even in the same league. That's why they're not really regarded as enemies of God. That's why Paul says that it's our battle is not against flesh and blood, but our battle is against these principalities and powers